While and do whiles is the same as a for loop, but it's utilized when we don't know the amount of times the repetition is going to happen. A great example of this is, let's say we don't know when the user wants to stop playing the game. When the user wants to be smart and enter the correct values that we want. Let's say if we want integer, but he keeps putting in something else. We're asking for his age, but he's saying something different. So the amount of times he makes some mistakes, we don't know. We don't know how many times he's going to do that mistake. It could be that right off the bat he got it. We don't know how long he wants to play the game. It could be that at any moment of time, he just doesn't want to play the game. It could be his mom going after him saying, hey, stop playing your game, go do some work. Or it could be he just fed up. So when the amount of repetition is unknown, we want to use while loop do whiles. But again, this is a rule of thumb. It's something we respect, but we don't have to fully respect. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, the difference between while loop and do while loops is the amount of execution of the body. Inside of a while loop, it could be possible that it doesn't execute at all if the condition is false. Inside of a do while, it will always execute the body at least once before checking the condition to determine if it should go on further. So how would this look different inside of our graph over here? I'm having a blank in my mind. So if we look inside these two graphs, we see that our while loop, before it executes the body, it will ask the question, and based if this condition is true, then it will do the body. So it could have the potential to have a condition that's false to begin with, and this is a possibility. While a do while, it will do the body first initially, but then ask that question, which would determine if it's going to do the body again, if it's true, or to just stop, right? This is what makes the difference between a while loop and a do while. Where would you utilize this? Some people will never do a do while, and it's again possible. Remember that whiles, do whiles, and for loop, they're basically doing the same thing. It's again about readability for us, for the code, for the user. So how would this look like inside code? So right now, you'll notice that this while loop, we're starting with the while loop. This while loop is the same as our for loop that we had initially. Notice the big difference is we put the initialization outside. And again, we don't want to use a while loop for when we know the amount of times it's repeating. But just to show you that for loop, while loop, do while, or any loop, they're all practically the same thing, especially at the base, is that we could convert one to the other and it would still function the same way. So if I run it, again, we stopped it at the infinite loop. Let's go and make that increment. You'll notice that it's going to start at 0 and it's going to go up to 4, the same as our for loop. Now, when should we use a while loop or a do while was when we don't know the amount of repetition. A good example is when we're trying to get a range from the user's input, and we don't know when he's going to get it correctly. So let's go ahead and convert that code into something that would get the user's input. Now, I blocked off the view over here at the bottom, but here's the graphs. You could take a little pause to see what it is. So again, I'm not used to cameras being on, but anyway, we're back. You could rewind, go see the graph. So I changed the code. To have the user's input. Where we're asking the user for an age, we're going to get it. And while the age is outside the correct range, notice here I inverse normally what I want our loop to do. Something a bit confusing. Here, I want to repeat while the age is incorrect. So in this case, while the age is less than 0 or bigger than 120. Less than or equal to 0. So 0, I don't accept either, right? So let's see how that would look. So before the loop gets run, that's line 8, then we ask the user for an age. We didn't specify what the age was here, so it was bad feedback here. And the user goes ahead and enters 0. I'm not born yet. And that becomes a mistake. So here, right away, our loop is running more. It's running once at least. So he enters -5, still no good. He enters 125, still not good. If we do the edge cases, 120, you'll notice we're outside of our loop and it's finished. So in this case, our loop ran 3 times, not 4. The first initial one is outside, right? It ran 3 times. It's also possible that it doesn't run at all, such as the user enters a correct age from the beginning. I'm 15 years old, we're outside the loop. In this case, the loop did not run at all because the condition is checked before the body, right? Now, why would you want to use this do while? Well, notice this part. Please enter your age. It's kind of a repetition of what I wrote here. If I write the better feedback, as in if I copy this and I put it here, well, then it's exactly the same 2 lines being repeated many times. So rather than repeat my code, in this case, I would use a do while. Let's look at how that would look. Now you'll notice that the repetition of my code has decreased. I'm not printing the same thing twice. I have to initialize my variable outside of the loop, so I have access to it here because this is context. If I initialize the variable inside this body, it's only accessible inside of those parentheses, this context, this body. The second thing to note is the semicolon required now after the while. This is to specify that it belongs to this do while and not to the next while that's going to be shown. As an example, something like this. To not get this confusion, they added this semicolon. Now, you'll notice that the condition is after the body. So what would happen in this scenario is the body will first run, then it will check the condition. So we will always have it executed once. So if I run it right now, our body will run at least once inside our loop. And if the user makes a mistake, let's say he puts in -5, well, then the loop will go again. So you see now it's already twice. But the moment he enters correctly, we're done with the loop, the same as the while loop. The moment the condition is false, finish or end the loop, right? So this could be convenient so that our code is not repeated. It's again going to the convention of clean code. And this is a while loop and a do while. Again, remember that while loops and do whiles, we're doing them when we don't know how many times we're going to repeat, right? It could have been that we run this and the user is always putting something wrong. And this could happen because the user is not reading what's going on his screen. He's just going fast. And we don't want him to do mistakes or accidents because it will come back to us. So in this case, when we don't know the amount of repetition, we want to use while loops and do while. It's cleaner in our eyes. And if we know the amount of repetition, well, then we're going to utilize the for loop. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next video.